Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. The kitchen was bathed in the soft, fading light of twilight, that particular kind of glow that seemed to hang in the air, heavy and still, as if the world itself had paused, holding its breath. Alex stood at the sink, her hands submerged in warm, soapy water. Though the dishes had been scrubbed clean long ago, she lingered, her fingers tracing the smooth edge of a plate. The motion was rhythmic, almost meditative, as if it might anchor her to something solid in a world that seemed increasingly intangible. Outside, the sky was bruised in shades of purple and blue, the twilight pressing gently against the window pane, the fading daylight a soft weight on the glass. The dishwasher hummed quietly in the background, its mechanical hum filling the space, a heartbeat that somehow managed to mask the deeper silence that lay beneath it, a silence that wasn't peaceful or comforting, but oppressive like a thick fog that had crept into her life, settling over everything. The quiet ache in her chest had grown so familiar that she barely noticed it anymore. Her husband, David, was in the living room, his presence distant and muted, the flickering of the TV casting restless shadows across the walls. They hadn't spoken much in hours. Not really. Not in years. Their marriage hadn't disintegrated in a fiery storm of arguments or betrayals. No, it had eroded slowly, quietly, like the shore being worn down by a ceaseless tide. Alex, at 42, felt like a ghost in her own home, moving through the motions of daily life without truly being there. She remembered the early days with David back when their silences had been comfortable, shared like a blanket on a cold winter's night. Back when they'd laugh over burnt dinners, steal kisses in the hallway, and dream of a future that felt wide open, full of endless possibilities. But somewhere along the way, that warmth had faded. David's career had taken over, his late nights at the office growing longer, stretching into weekends. Alex had filled the emptiness with work, with errands, with anything that kept her mind off the growing distance between them. They still shared a bed, but even that felt like a mere formality. His back was always turned, his phone lit up on the knitstand, a silent wall between them. She often wondered when they had stopped trying, when they had silently decided that this quiet, polite coexistence was enough. The sound of footsteps broke her from her thoughts. "Hey, Alex," a voice called, warm and hesitant, pulling her out of the gray fog that had settled over her. She turned, her hands still dripping, to see Liam standing in the doorway. At 23, her stepbrother, David's son from his first marriage, was taller than she remembered. His dark hair was slightly tousled, a sheepish grin tugging at the corners of his lips. His presence seemed to fill the room in a way that felt almost unfamiliar, like sunlight piercing through a cloudy sky. Alex's heart gave an unexpected lurch. "What's up?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt as she wiped her hands on a dish towel. Liam held up a leather belt, its buckle twisted awkwardly. I think I broke this," he said with a soft chuckle. "Can you help?" His eyes met hers, and there was something in them, something unspoken, a quiet tension. Maybe it was the ease of someone who didn't realize the weight of her loneliness. Alex blinked, caught off guard by how natural his request felt. It was like they'd done this 1,000 times before, like this kitchen was as much his as hers. She managed a smirk. "You're a grown man, Liam. Can't fix your own belt?" Liam laughed, stepping closer, the belt dangling loosely between his fingers. "Laugh it up," he teased. "It's jammed." "I tried, but it's stuck." With a sigh, Alex held out her hand. "Let me see." Their fingers brushed as he passed it to her. A brief touch that sent a jolt through her, a sharp, unexpected sensation. She focused on the buckle, her hands working instinctively to free it from its grip on the worn leather. Liam hovered close, his breath soft near her shoulder. She became hyper-aware of his presence, of the warmth radiating from him, the faint scent of his cologne. Her pulse quickened, a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. With a sudden snap, the buckle gave way, and Liam's jeans slipped slightly, revealing a sliver of skin above his waistband. He fumbled, catching them with a soft, muttered laugh, but Alex's gaze lingered a moment too long before she quickly turned her eyes back to his face. He was watching her, his expression unreadable, a mix of amusement and something deeper, something charged that made the air between them feel heavy. "Guess it's beyond saving," Alex said, her voice tight. Liam nodded, fastening the belt quickly. "Yeah, looks like it." For a moment, neither of them moved. The dish towel was still damp in her hand, a lifeline she clung to as her pulse raced. Beneath her skin. "I should clean up," she muttered, stepping back. Liam lingered, his eyes holding hers for a second longer before he turned toward the hallway. As he walked away, Alex stood motionless, staring at the floor, her heart pounding like a drumbeat. She couldn't ignore the feeling that had stirred inside her. That night, as she lay beside David, his snores filling the room, his back turned. To her, like an impenetrable wall, she stared at the ceiling. Liam's face, his grin, his nearness replayed in her mind like a shadow that wouldn't fade. It should have faded, but it didn't. It grew sharper, more vivid, until it felt like a confession she hadn't meant to make. The next few days blurred into one another, a haze of routine and underlying tension. Alex tried to convince herself. She was imagining things the way Liam's eyes lingered just a little too long, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way her own body seemed to shift when he entered a room. She was his stepmother, for God's sake. That was the line, the boundary, the rule. But lines blurred when someone stepped too close, and Liam was stepping, not boldly or with clear intent, but in small, subtle ways. Like the morning when he reached above her to grab a mug from the cabinet, his chest brushing lightly against. Her back, the air between them crackled with something unspoken. Or the evening when he entered the living room barefoot, his hair damp from a shower, casually asking what she was reading, as though it mattered. Alex found herself dreading being alone with him and yet, at the same time, craving it. A contradiction. That left her dizzy. Then came the night of the storm. David was away at a conference in Atlanta, one of those trips he never bothered to invite her on anymore. The sky outside was a slate gray, thick with the scent of rain. Alex curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book she wasn't reading. The house felt too large, too empty. Thunder cracked outside, making her flinch. The silence wasn't just in the house. It was in her too, a hollow space she couldn't fill. Footsteps broke the quiet, followed by the soft clink of ceramic. "I made tea," Liam said, stepping into the room with 2 steaming mugs. Alex looked up, startled. "You didn't have to," she said, but he shrugged, handing her a cup. Their fingers brushed as she took the mug, a slow spark of electricity passing between them. Liam sat beside her, not across the room, not at a safe distance, but right next. To her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his arm through the blanket. Alex jumped when another thunderclap passed over the house, since she disliked storms. She giggled and looked out the window as Liam asked in a soft way, "The storm is not here." The quietness of this house is excessively silent when David is not around. Liam's eyes remained steady as he gazed at her. "Is it the house that's quiet? Or you?" he asked. Is it the question that landed like a stone in still water rippling through her? Alex turned to him, startled, maybe both of them. She admitted that her voice was barely above a whisper, and he nodded, his eyes locked on hers, seeing her in a way that felt raw and exposed. She lifted the edge of her blanket, a small gesture, an invitation. Liam hesitated, then slid beneath. Their shoulders brushing, and they sat like that side by side, wrapped in cotton warmth, the lamplight casting dancing shadows. The world shrank to the distance between them while the storm raged outside. Alex looked at him, and his eyes were already on hers steadily and unflinchingly. There was no humor in his gaze, only something terrifying and real. The storm roared, thunder shaking the windows as if they too were concealing secrets. Alex could feel his presence, the heat of him, the rhythm of his breath, and her skin alive in a way that hadn't been in years. The edge of the blanket brushed her arm where Liam's elbow rested, And even though they weren't touching, she felt every breath he took as lightning flashed the room blazing white for a heartbeat. Alex flinched a tiny movement, but enough you. Okay, Liam asked, his voice low meant only for her, and she nodded, her throat tight, just storms. Alex sat motionless, knees drawn close, the teacup forgotten on the side table. Liam was close enough that she could feel the heat rising from his skin, a closeness that made her memory feel like touch. I don't think it's the storm you're afraid of, he remarked quietly as he cocked his head to watch her. Alex looked up at him, but instead of responding with words, he reached up slowly and moved a lock of hair away from her face, stroking her cheek with his fingertips. The touch was so gentle it was unimaginable, but it froze her breathing. She uttered the scarcely audible words, "This is wrong," over the rain. "Then tell me to stop." Liam's voice was steady, and Alex opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The part of her that wanted to pull away was gone, drowned in the warmth of his gaze, and the kiss deepened a release of everything Alex had held back. Liam's hands found her waist, and his careful, reverent touch grounding her, and his lips tasted of chamomile, rain, and something else, maybe your youth. She didn't know how long they stayed like that, wrapped in each other, the storm outside, echoing the one inside. She only knew that she felt alive when they pulled apart, breathless, their eyes locked, and the moment was fragile and heavy. Liam rested his forehead against hers, telling her that this wasn't a mistake. Alex closed her eyes. The words were simple, but they landed like thunder together, sounding so human, so possible, but they weren't just two people. They were entangled in a web of David Alex's family's history. Alex pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, the weight of their actions settling in guilt, not feeling sharp. It was quiet like a shadow in the corner. She stood with her knees unsteady, and she said, "I need a minute," not looking into his eyes. Her heart was screaming. One answer, mind. Another. Liam nodded, allowing her to proceed upstairs to the restroom, where she gazed at her reflection, no lipstick smudges, no flushed cheeks. Simply a weary lady who had done something unimaginable and horrifying and didn't regret it. She doused her face in cold water, but when she came back, it didn't break the spell. Liam remained there. She sat opposite him this time because she needed space after their eyes locked, while they were both sitting on the couch and gazing at the chilly fireplace. "I shouldn't have kissed you," she finally said, and Liam's mouth twitched not in amusement but in pain. "Do you mean that she struggled for words?" "I mean, I shouldn't have, but I wanted to." He nodded, and so did I. The silence was filled with a loud ticking clock, and Alex wrapped her arms around herself. "This doesn't end well, Liam, because I'm your stepbrother." When she finished, he looked at his hands and said, "I'm not a kid, Alex. I know what this looks like, but I know how I feel. I've seen you for a long time." His remarks caused a fracture in her defenses, not her heart. She watched him go as the storm faded outside, but its echo pulsed in her blood. The silence wasn't empty any longer. It was heavy with consequences. Liam stood giving her space, saying, "I'm going upstairs, but if you want to talk or not, talk on here." Morning light filtered through the curtains, creating golden lines across the floor. Liam sat across from Alex on the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes on the floor. No one said anything since that's what's left over after a storm, but the weight of what had swept away made Alex break the silence. "I should have stopped us." Alex was sitting on the couch with the blanket still around her, her tea cold and unopened. "Liam didn't relocate. Do you regret it?" She muttered, "But that doesn't make it right," to the guy who had seen her while no one else had. His jaw clenched, but his eyes softened the moment we stopped acting as though I had a husband. She said, "I watched you shrink over the years, even though your laugh was still loud, you were fading, and I hated him for letting it happen." His words were silent, but they were mirrors, and Alex couldn't take her eyes off of him. She was walking to the kitchen, needing space, and she hovered there with her hands gripping the counter. Liam followed him, nodding, and Trudden, who was just present. You disliked your father, so I pied him. She turned to face him. Liam remarked, I'm not asking you to run away with me. I'm asking you not to lie to yourself about what last night was. He did this because he had something that most men chase, and didn't realize it was slipping away. Liam stopped at the door and asked, if it were just us, no titles, no history, would you still be afraid? Alex exhaled shakily. What was it true? He asked, maybe it's the beginning of something. Or maybe just a moment that reminded you you're alive. Her throat tightened. No, she said before she could stop herself. I'll wait, he said, and then he was gone. Alex strolled through each room of the peaceful, but not lonely house, viewing her life as though it belonged to someone else. In the shower, she glanced at her mirror and saw not remorse, but a woman on the verge of becoming. The wedding picture, the mail, the throw pillows, none of it felt like hers. The day went by in a blur of pointless chores. Vacuuming, folding towels, and cooking, Alex was sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee when Liam returned. At dusk, his presence shifted in the air. He sat across from her, waiting. I don't regret it, she finally said, but I can't pretend the world doesn't exist. I've lived a quiet life, not happy, not miserable, just steady, and then one night I remembered what it's like to feel seen. Liam let out a soft exhale, sensing that something genuine doesn't always mean it's right. She went on, I'm not asking you to break your life apart. I'm asking if you want something real. Alex looked at him, seeing the boy who had helped. Her with groceries, the teenager who had asked for advice on college, the man who understood her better than David ever had. I don't know, she said, and it felt sincere. I need time. Liam nodded. I'm not going anywhere, even if this ends here. I'll still be someone who saw you. Don't hide that. You make it hard to forget maybe you're not meant to. Alex was walking to the window when the sun set, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Liam got up to go, saying, Give me some space, and she turned to thank him. He hesitated, then promised her that whatever she decided to do for him, he would do it for her, not because it was expected of her, because it was true. She nodded, and he left that evening. Alex dreamed of a porch swinging a coffee cup with a man's hand reaching for hers, not heavy, not possessive, but steady, not sure if it was Liam's, but she knew she wouldn't settle for a life where she vanished. Alex slept with the window open and the smell of damp earth filling the room. This narrative explores what occurs when you go unnoticed for an extended period of time and someone eventually notices you, not simply about love or treachery. It's also an opportunity to consider consent and boundaries, particularly in intricate partnerships. Alex and Liam's story demonstrates how hazy boundaries can have negative effects, but it also emphasizes the value of communication and self-awareness. If you're navigating relationships, take the time to comprehend your feelings and establish clear boundaries. Intimacy, whether emotional or physical, requires mutual understanding and respect. To everyone watching, thank you for joining me on this journey through broken vows. Your support means the world. If this story spoke to you, please hit the subscribe button and join our community for more stories that delve deeply into the human heart. Resources like counseling or trusted friends can help you make decisions that are in line with your values.